Thank you, Mr. Inoue. I have finally found you, Mr. Inoue. Holding the gift entrusted by Yaki tightly in my hands, my heart is filled with emotions, and I am speechless for a long time. This is a gift packed with the fond memories and longings of the Aboriginal elders for Mr. Inoue. Gazing at the tombstone for Mr. Inoue, Inosuke, I see the big character, love, engraved on the center. I realize that not only did the Aboriginal elders have fond memories of Mr. Inoue, he himself also mutually held special feelings for everything related to Taiwan. The Tayal phrase, God's weaving, carved on the tombstone further reminds me what took place at the Aboriginal communities in Taiwan long ago. Years ago, when I first arrived at the Aboriginal communities as a medical doctor, I loved the opportunity to sit by Yaki to watch her do traditional weaving. The Tayal weaving is such a beautiful creation of art. Yaki would line up rows of colorfully dyed yarns vertically according to her creative thoughts. She then used horizontal threads that zigzagged through the yarns from one end to another, followed by a strong press with the weaving board to tighten the threads. This repeated task produced a rhythmic and melodic sound, slick, slick, trum, trum. Yutas frequently came by to have a talk with her. These two elders would inevitably start to reminisce about the Japanese medical doctor, Mr. Inoue. This made me very curious about him. Mr. Inoue's father was killed in Taiwan, Yutas told me one day. I was in shock and asked, did he come to Taiwan to seek revenge? Yutas shook his head and started to recall the past with a sense of melancholy. Mr. Inoue would think about his father whenever he saw a camphor tree. He would lay his hand on the tree and say, if not for the camphor trees, my father would not have come to Taiwan and would not have lost his life to the Aborigines because of misunderstanding. And so I would not have come to Taiwan to preach the gospel, hoping to change the lives of the Aborigines. This is all in accordance with the will of God. So, according to what you are saying, Mr. Inoue did not come to seek revenge? I asked persistently. Yuta said, that is correct. Even though Mr. Inoue seldom spoke and appeared serious, he had a very kind heart. You could not find a trace of hatred in him. He then spoke to me with great intensity that Mr. Inoue wanted to preach the gospel to the Aboriginal communities, but it was prohibited by the Japanese government. He, however, did not give up. Instead, he decided to study medicine and to use medical treatment as a way to reach the mountainous people in Taiwan. Whenever he learned about sickness in the Aboriginal community, he would walk through treacherous mountain paths to provide the needed care. Mr. Inoue stated that he had received boundless love from God. He wanted to dedicate his life as a burning candle and let the flame of love burn completely. This is unbelievable that Mr. Inoue would act selflessly after he had encountered such tragedy. I replied as I rested my chin on my hands. I was puzzled and tried to understand. I inquired of Yutas further, how did you meet him? Yutas answered with a smile. It was a cold winter season and a lot of people in the community came down with the flu. I did not have proper clothing or a bed cover to keep me warm. Mr. Inoue not only treated my illness, he even gave me a shirt to keep warm. I, however, would rather have stayed cold than put on this expensive shirt. I did not want to make this shirt dirty. When Mr. Inoue found out, he scolded me. Is life not more important than a shirt? After stating his case, he gave me a supply of pork to improve my nutrition. Through his facial expression, I detected a great deal of respect with a trace of nostalgia from Yutas for Mr. Inoue. He stated that Mr. Inoue's task of providing medical treatment to the Aboriginal communities was very difficult. Much of what he had worked for and built was destroyed by typhoons and monsoon rain. His medical equipment and medications were washed away by flood. Moreover, 3 of his children died over a span of 8 years. His heart was sorrowful. In spite of his personal pain, he was determined to stay in Taiwan to provide care for the mountainous people. Yutas added, Mr. Inoue was a special man. In order to improve his communication skill, he studied the Aboriginal language diligently and learned our ways of living. After spending more time together, he came to realize that Aborigines were unpretentious, energetic, generous, and lovers of life. They valued marriage and were highly civilized on issues regarding equal rights for men and women. So he abandoned his original thoughts to reform the Aborigines and became a strong proponent for them instead. When he went on radio broadcastings and news, he advocated abolishing derogatory terms such as barbarians. Yutas gave a big thumbs up while recounting this history. Because of this transformation, Mr. Inoue worked tirelessly to improve the lives of the Aborigines. He would always find a way to help. Yaki, who had been weaving quietly on the side, listening to Yutas, broke her silence. Yaki laid down the threads in her hands and said, Mr. Inoue went back to Japan at one point to take care of some business. While there, he learned that 2 Tayal girls were detained in Tokyo. They had no money to return home. He eagerly looked for them like he would for his own children. Finally, he was able to find them and raise enough funds for them to return to Taiwan safely. Yaki choked up with tears as she proceeded. I passed out from losing too much blood while giving birth to my son. Fortunately, Mr. Inoue was providing medical care in my community at that time, and he took good care of me. He saved my life. After my health was restored, he asked me to assist him in caring for other patients. With this opportunity, I was able to make a living to support my child. Mr. Inoue not only took care of the physical bodies of our community, but he also cared about our daily lives. I grew more and more in my respect for Mr. Inoue. I suddenly remembered this one thing and asked, was Mr. Inoue able to fulfill his dream of preaching the gospel? Mr. Inoue spoke in a prayer meeting that he wanted to share the gospel with the Aborigines in Taiwan. His ministry, however, was prohibited by the Japanese government. No one came to the Lord as a result. He sobbed when he mentioned this. This must have been devastating for him, Yaki replied, and that the Aborigines did not openly confess their faith in Christ because they did not want to impact Mr. Inoue's work negatively. Then Mr. Inoue returned to Japan, I asked with great anticipation. Yutas recalled that after the war ended, Mr. Inoue wanted to stay with the Aborigines and continue his medical mission. He even changed his name to Gao Tianming so that he could be assimilated as a Taiwanese. Unfortunately, this gesture did not succeed, and he was eventually asked to leave Taiwan. Prior to his departure, he learned that many of the Tairoco people came to the Hualien Harbor Church to be baptized. He appeared calm on the surface but was deeply touched inside. Many people could not understand the things Mr. Inoue had done for the people of Taiwan. The fact is that he spent his life preaching the gospel. He used the love of Christ to affect people's lives. After he left Taiwan, many Aborigines became Christians. Although he was not here to witness, they are the fruits of his labor through the years of prayers and his medical work. Yaki became more emotional as she spoke. After a little while, Yaki regained her composure and spoke slowly. I really miss Mr. Inoue. Where is he buried? I want to bring my children to visit him and to thank him personally. As I finished my conversation with these two elders and was about to leave, I made a promise to Yaki. I will help you find Mr. Inoue. It does not matter how long this will take. I will find him. She nodded with a smile and took out a small box. She then took something out from this box and handed it to me. It was a handmade cloth sack for eyeglasses. Several years have gone by, and Yaki is now at home in heaven. In this season of the cherry blossom, I stand in front of the burial site for Mr. Inoue and reflect on his life and his contributions to the people of Taiwan. Very much like the Tayal weaving, God had arranged his life in a beautiful pattern. And similar to the beating sound of the weaving board, Mr. Inoue used every life experience and tribulation to create a masterpiece of art that no one can replace nor duplicate. Standing in front of Mr. Inoue's tombstone, I humbly offer the hand-woven Tayal sack for eyeglasses made by Yaki. My heart is filled with gratitude. Thank you, Mr. Inoue. Thank you for dedicating your whole life to the land of Taiwan.